I'm Carol Bacak-Egbo, historian for Oakland County Parks. Join me now for an episode of History in Our Parks. Two teachers, some pigs, and a railroad station. An Orion County Park story. When I was researching the land that eventually became Orion Oaks, I discovered something interesting. An old map showed Cole Station, and it was located along a railroad track. I was curious about Cole Station. I learned that it was a station along the Pontiac, Oxford, and Port Austin Railroad, which was completed in 1883. It had been intended that it would move between Pontiac and Port Austin at the tip of the thumb, but the route was changed and it ended up stopping at Caseville instead. In 1889, the name was changed to the Pontiac, Oxford, and Northern Railroad Company. Today, the Pollyant Trail, the walking trail, is located along the former tracks of that railroad line. I was curious about Cole Station. I wanted to learn more. The first story I found was an amazing one. It was the story of Mary and Catherine Banks. They were two sisters, lived in Oxford here on Mill Street. And I found out that every morning they walked down to the depot and they took the 7 a.m. train and they headed north all the way to Cole Station. And then they got out, walked down, what today is Clarkston Road, to Shanghai School, where they both taught school. And then in the evening, when school was over, they walked back to the station and took the 6 o'clock train home. Now, I learned that the Pontiac, Oxford, and Northern wasn't always reliable, and there were times when the 6 o'clock train just didn't come. And when that was the case, they stayed here. Lamerson family. Lamerson family had been early settlers in Orion Township, and they had this beautiful Italianate house where the two teachers would spend the night. That house would have been located in what is now the northern central part of Orion Oaks County Park. Well, what more could I find out? I found out that the station itself was named for the Cole family. The Cole family had come in the 1830s to settle in the area. The station itself was on the land of Luke V. Cole. I learned that in 1884, 1 year after the train had come through, the station became a post office. When I looked at the postmaster records for Cole Station Post Office, I found something very interesting. Erastus Cole, the son of Luke Cole, was the first postmaster and would be in that position for 14 years. And then for 1 year, his sister, Kitty Cole Gates, would take over the position. And then in 1899, Luke Cole himself was postmaster, but sadly he died that year. And his brother, Christopher Cole, took over and would stay in that position until the post office was discontinued in 1907. So throughout the history of that little post office, there was always a Cole family member as postmaster. I also learned that like any train station, there were train problems. Like the time the train ran into a snowbank just north of the station, and passengers had to be taken by wagon to Lake Orion. Then there were derailments, like this one in 1900. In this case, over 20 people were injured when the train derailed. And then there was the pig problem. According to the Pontiac Gazette, several pigs got on the PO&N track ahead of the southbound passenger train. Tom Collins desired the running down and killing of the porkers, thus greasing the track to accelerate the speed of the train. But calmer heads prevailed, and they left the pigs alone. And when the porkers reached Cole Station, they rushed up the road out of danger. Well, besides these stories, I learned that a little town began to grow around Cole Station. In 1897, a blacksmith shop was built there. In 1899, a fancy new grocery store. Same year, a new depot was built at Cole Station, and the little town continued to grow. But then things changed. In 1912, Charles Randall purchased the coal land and the area around the station, and he platted it as a resort area and renamed it Randall Beach. He built Randall Beach Park along Little Tommy's Lake there. Even a lover's lane you could take to Randall Beach. And it became an area of cottages. And Cole Station faded away. But there was something more I needed to know. What had happened with Mary and Catherine Banks? I needed to know more about them. I found out that they were the daughters of Frederick and Savanah Banks. Frederick had enlisted in the 14th Michigan Infantry during the Civil War, and when his time was up, he re-enlisted in the Navy, and he became the personal secretary of Admiral David Porter. He would serve in that position through 1868. In the 1870s, he would marry Savanah Smith, and they would move to Oxford. Their son Louis was born in 1876, and Richard in 1883, and Mary, one of our teachers, in 1885. Sadly, in 1886, both Louis and Richard died of diphtheria within just days of each other. Catherine was born in 1888. Tragedy struck the family again in 1891 when Fred Banks had a stroke and died on a street in Oxford. It's hard to imagine how difficult life had been for Savanah Banks. About the teachers. Mary Banks married Bert White in 1907 in Oxford. They moved to Flint, where she became a public school teacher in Flint until her death in 1951. And Catherine Banks married Harold Simmons in Oxford in 1911. They moved to the small village of Lawrence in Van Buren County, where she was a teacher for many, many years. Catherine died in 1979. 2 teachers, some pigs, and a railroad station. An Orion Oaks County Park story.